Hello, and welcome to another episode of Recovery Matters. I am your host and producer, Orlando Andrews. And this is a place where we talk about recovery from behavioral health issues, substance abuse issues, and also mental health disorders. And today we're going to focus on substance abuse and mental health in the case of doing interventions. This is a topic that we've talked about a little bit before, but it's interesting as how different interventionists do things so differently. And today I have Phil Plant with me, who is an interventionist as well as a therapist. And so welcome, Phil. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just talk a little bit about how do you look at an intervention? Like, from your perspective, what is an intervention?
An intervention, it's got such an ugly name. It really is sort of a kickstart to recovery, I guess. It's an intervention's done when somebody's life is sort of out of control, whether it be an addiction, whether it be mental health, where they're really having struggles making life work, and they don't seem to realize it. So an intervention is planned. It can be one person, it can be 20 people, where you come in and you address this with a person and let them know, okay, you're in a safe place, I want to get you help. Let's turn this around.
Now, there are different types of interventions that people do. I know there's like a different school of thought on, invitation model versus some of the others. What type of interventions do you do?
Sort of an eclectic type. I don't do the Johnson method, which is a total surprise, where you walk into the room with like 20 people and hello, there's your first grade teacher.
Like on the show Intervention. Like
right. It's a little shaming. I could imagine if I walked into something like that, there'd be probably bloodshed. No, I don't do that. I don't shame at all. And I do what's called an invitational, but I give them a very short invite. I like to keep mine sort of small. I don't believe you need a big group and your first grade best friend and stuff. It's embarrassing a lot of times, and I just don't see a whole lot of need for it. I'm a family therapist, and I really put emphasis there on the family and just a very small group. And what I call an invitational, it's not really a formal embossed invitation. I usually go into whatever city that I'm in, and I'll meet with the people going to be involved with the intervention the night before, and usually I'll do the intervention the next morning, and I'll have, say, a parent or a spouse go in and usually wake them up and say, hey, you need to come down. No, I don't want to. I'm going to be in bed. And, I've got somebody here who wants to talk to you. That's my invitation, and I'm sitting down there, hello.
So it's still kind of
Could you give me some coffee?
It's still a surprise, but it's like the surprise is kind of mitigated a little bit to where it's not just a shock.
Exactly.
Like it's like you kind of introduce the idea to them a little bit before they just walk down into a room full of people. Like, what's happening?
I've done that. And when I first started, I had a couple things that they went, but it was such a cluster. I mean, there's so many raw emotions going on, and a lot of times you'll have family members that are just like, I'm mad. A lot of times, people that have had to endure a lot of stuff with someone who's addicted or has severe mental health issues that need treatment. The families have been through so much, they're exhausted, they're tired, and then all of a sudden, people start attacking, and then the person you're intervening on, they get defensive, they start attacking, and then I've got a 90-year-old grandmother sitting up there going, what? And that's happened. It only happened once. And it was terrible. But so I like to keep them small. And then that way, it doesn't have to be shaming. You don't have to go around. Everybody has to read their laundry list.
Right.
And it also, in my opinion, the person that's been intervened on, it's a better start to treatment. You know,
Right.
my goal is to get them in treatment. Actually, my goal is long-term sustainable recovery. Getting them into treatment normally is not tough because especially with addiction, normally you have, by the time it gets to me, that's pretty desperate.
Right.
And there's a lot of enabling going on. So I can pretty much cut the enabling legs off and they don't have a choice. Well, I guess I'll go if I'm going to be on the street. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So now when you're working with the enablers or the people, are you working pre-intervention to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page? And like for people who don't know necessarily, and we've heard this term a billion times, enabling.
Right.
Is that person who no matter what always gives in. Like, I also work in the industry, and you've got like the 50-year-old mother calling, for their 30-year-old son, or like the 80-year-old mom calling for their 50-something-year-old son. Like, he needs help, but he's such a good boy. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, okay. But enabling is that person who, no matter what, always kind of gives in. Like, gives them more money, gives them a place to stay.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
So how do you mitigate that person changing their behavior in order to get help for this person?
That's another thing you learn the hard way. I was, one of the top first 5 interventions. I had a rocky start. No, one of the first 5 interventions I did. I was sitting here and I thought I was firing on all cylinders, doing, at the pre-intervention with my little group of people, and it was pared down a little. And all of a sudden, I said, I'm sure there's some enabling, and all of a sudden, this mother just stands up, and I guess she couldn't take it anymore because everybody had been blaming her, and she goes, I get it, I'm an enabler, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like Satan spewed from her head.
Right.
And I'm like, woo, and she goes, and I'm like, so many people had just beaten her down for this. And I'm like, ooh, calm down. I said, and I mean this, enabling starts from a very good place. I mean, it starts from a position of love.
Right.
You love somebody so bad that you cannot stand to see them what they're going through.
Suffer in any way.
Right.
Like
and you've got to meet them where they're at. It's not, it's very rare that you're going to be able to a mom who has really just gone overboard in enabling their child. You're not going to be able to say, well, you tell him if he didn't go to treatment, he is on the streets or she is on the streets. Right. That's unfathomable. They're not, I know they're not going to be able to do that, so we find something in between.
Okay.
I'm not going to buy those 800 thread sheet cups.
You'll have to sleep on like polyester.
Right. No more breakfast in bed, and give me that credit card.
Right.
You can keep the Visa, but.
So now we have like this. There's been so many stories and so much talked about enabling and enablers, but in the family dynamic, what else is a problem? Like, what else is a problem? It's not just the enabler. There has to be other people in that dynamic that are actually adding to the issue. And it's not just the person always bailing the person out. There has to be another role that's just as harmful. What would that be?
The entire family.
Or some of them.
Yeah, an entire family system has been just rocked. I mean, whenever, especially when you're dealing with someone with an addiction, everybody's role gets skewed. I mean, it's you have the scapegoat. You have everybody within the family system's been affected.
Okay. Now, saying the scapegoat. Now, isn't it usually the addict that's the scapegoat, or could it be like someone else in the family?
Somebody's got to be. There's got to be an excuse for the addict's behavior a lot of times.
Okay.
And so that is the scapegoat usually. The addict, you're going to protect them. You're going to give them reasons for not showing up for work. You're going to give them reasons for not coming to the family dinners. You're
And
gonna,
that's not always the enabler. That can be another person in the family.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that usually, the other person usually takes on the scapegoat as to where they make up excuses for
Their
this, and a
behavior.
lot of times it's pulled back on them.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get them there, or I couldn't, and that's not necessarily the enabler.
Okay.
And to a degree, everyone in the family is enabling. It's just certain levels of enabling.
Okay.
It's really, it takes such a toll on the parents' relationship and the relationship with other siblings. The addict is always, and I shouldn't say the addict, I'm trying to change my verbiage.
Right.
The addicted individual,
Right.
and that's true, is always getting the attention. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, and a lot has to be sacrificed
Right.
for that, and it causes resentment. It's just a very damaged family system.
Okay, so now in that, I think on another episode we talked a little bit about how we always assume when you're doing an intervention that you're trying to like save everyone from the addict, like it's always the addict at fault. But sometimes the family system is so damaged or so dysfunctional that it literally is getting the person who is struggling with addiction out of that space.
Right.
Do you find that occasionally, or
All the time, and it's. I don't go into a situation, I let everyone know that, okay, while he's getting treatment, y'all are getting help. Whether I do it, a lot of times I'll go on and do family conversions as to where, you work with the different family dynamics. I usually stay with families at least 3 months to sort of be with them during treatment while the addicted individual's in treatment. Make sure they're getting some kind of help. You can't, you can't expect someone to come out of treatment, be put back into this unhealthy environment that
And
played a
succeed.
part.
Right.
So everybody within the family, you've got to restructure those family dynamics, so they're going to need help as well.
So when you're actually working with families, I know it's I mean, Al-Anon is of course a concept, or Nar-Anon, but what are some other things that families can do that are going to prepare them to be more of a healthy environment for someone who's struggling with substance abuse?
Well, I think it's normally, and this is, this is a different area that I'm looking at right now. I think it's important that families get back to being a family. When someone comes out of treatment, they're not healed. I mean, it's not like boing, be nice.
Right.
Wish I had that boing. But it's sort of the beginning. That's a great kickstart. More than a kickstart, it's a foundation. But it's important that the family be healed. They learn to not let go, but they learn to look at the addicted individual as someone who is in a healing process. We've struggled so many years to get addiction recognized as a disease, and you don't really beat somebody down for having a disease. If somebody's got cancer, you just finished your chemotherapy, now let's talk. And that's, we see it all the time. So, one of the first things I say to families is, it's okay to be mad. Get it out. Let's go ahead and be mad and move on from this. Aftercare is hugely important, and I want the families. I don't want them to have to play hall monitor because there's still suspicion. There's still, for years, a lot of times they're used to being lied to, stolen from, just the whole shebang. They're not going to forget that in 30 days, and so I want them to be as much of a loving, supportive family, and not necessarily have to say, could you pee in this cup for me before you come to dinner? They shouldn't have to play hall monitor. So.
Okay, so that's interesting that you bring up the ideas. So much of the industry focuses on these short-term treatments like 30 days and then you're done, or maybe you go to PHP or 90 days, 90 and 90, and then you're done.
Right.
But like recovery is a long-term process.
Yeah.
So I would think it would actually be the same on the family side. Like, just as much as the person who's struggling with addiction has to actually continue to work on that pretty much their entire lives.
Right.
What about the dysfunction in the family?
Right.
Isn't that a process that takes some time that's going to, more than 90 days, maybe years?
Right.
Or, what is it that they should be looking into or looking at to kind of work that dynamic to the point that it becomes healthy?
And so much of their a family's life is, and I want to say parents because those are the people that love you unconditionally. It's the only time you'll experience unconditional love. Yeah,
maybe.
Right.
That's like not all of them.
Right, and not.
Right.
That's when I start looking at personality disorders.
Yeah.
But they've spent so much of their lives. This has become who this family is. Worrying if little Johnny or little Susie is using, or if I'm going to find them, in the ER. And that has dictated the family dynamics for so long. I love the organizations. There's one, Not One More Alabama.
Not One More?
Not One More Alabama. And it's like one of my favorite nonprofits where it really is focusing on the opiate epidemic. And you have families who have active, there are some families whose child has passed away, but a lot of them still have either children that are recovering from opiate addiction, doing well, or still in the process. And it's this enormous group that started in Huntsville, and it's unbelievable the work they do, and it deals with the family dynamics. I love to see families get involved with stuff like that and stay, whether it be therapy, whether it be something that means something to them and can help improve the family dynamics, because you're going to have to. It can't be all the addicted individual's fault.
But the other thing is, like you said, if that person starts to heal, it changes the dynamic of everybody too. So everything that they're used to being focused on, everything they're used to being about, they're not dealing with that anymore. And so how do you get them to focus in a different way? They're always waiting for the person to mess up, or they're always waiting, which has its own pressure on that individual. It's like they're never going to be trusted, so why bother? Or, I'm always going to be seen this way, so why bother? But so we know Al-Anon and Nar-Anon. Those are 12-step programs that people can do. I know NAMI for people struggling with someone with mental health. Or having to take care of somebody, because a lot of times you find out underlying that addiction there's depression, anxiety, or there might be a personality disorder. So that actually helps. But what other type of therapies that would you see like that actually help?
I'm a fan of individual therapy. I'm a fan of family therapy. You do have the Al-Anon. I think that certain groups, organizations, I think that they're very good for a period of time. And then it's sort of time. We all transition into different things. And so, as you transition and there's more time, sobriety under the hat, it is hard coming out of addiction thinking, I've already screwed my damn life up. Everybody hates me. I've done this, I've done that. There's so much right now emphasis on the healing aspect of it, and I think things are different even now than they were 5-6 years ago when I first transitioned 7 years ago my practice into this field. So that's not as big of an issue. I don't want the people that I work with to be defined by this. I think AA has done an excellent. I think it should be part of every treatment plan. But I don't know, I don't necessarily want my I'm Phil Plan, I'm an addict. I don't like leading with that. It's a part of your life, and it's something that might always be present, but it doesn't define who you are.
Well, yeah, there's this thing now, everybody's trying to change the language, especially things like that, like, hi, my name is Orlando.
Right.
I'm a recovering alcoholic or someone in
Right.
long-term recovery.
Right.
So that has more of a positive connotation. But one of the things that, there's adult children of alcoholics too.
Right.
And that's one of those 12-step programs that actually looks at the family system as it being an inherited dysfunction. Like, it's not like most families just show up one day and they become dysfunctional. It's like they grew up as well and they pass down the dysfunction from generations that come down. And so in each generation, there's always something that's going on. Is that another program that you would suggest that, people look into?
Oh, definitely suggest. And that's, that's part of the whole concept. And when you say inherited, and some people look at the DNA as it's in the DNA, and that's neither here nor there. But what I look at when I think you might be referring to, you might be referring to as both, is the generational aspect of and I think a lot of that's environmental, but you tend to find a lot of cyclical things. Things happen in cycles. It's like the cycle of abuse.
Right.
It's sort of the same with addiction. If I grew up watching my parents freebase or seeing them, if it was acceptable in our home to shoot heroin, likelihood is I'm going to do that too.
Right.
And it's generational. And just like the cycle of abuse,
Right.
If my dad beat my mom as much as I might have hated it as a child, there's a very high percentage that in likelihood that I'll do the same.
Do the same or get involved with someone who does it to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, the same thing that happens.
Right. And so I think in that way, if you grew up in a family of alcoholics where it was minimalized, or it just was commonplace.
Right, or people they drank your dad drank every weekend, watching the games, watching football, after dinner.
Right.
The things that were normal for your family that they didn't seem to have a problem with, but of course you can't.
Right.
Get away with it because you're actually having consequences. But so the idea also of interventions, there's this really high statistic that they're 90% successful. Or somewhere in there, that's kind of what they say. Whenever you call someone for an intervention, they're about 90% successful, 95%. But what do you think that is attributed to, or why do you
I'm
think
like 94.
94?
No, I'm very high.
Yeah.
But here, no.
Are you high right now?
I'm very high. No, I'm not. My percentage is very high, but so is pretty much everyone that does this for a living. The thing is, that's not the hard part. It really isn't. If, like I say, I think now I've done 278 interventions, and I've only not gotten 16 people to treatment.
Okay.
So I mean that whatever those percentage are, it's pretty high.
Yeah.
But so is Heather Hayes. So is just pretty much anyone that does interventions.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because you cut off the enabling. They're going to have no choice but to go. Where you run into a huge problem is the wealthy.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, and. I would say.
Well, I mean, it's the wealthy that can afford an intervention too, generally, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not cheap, so.
No, but no, I just recently did one, and someone came into some money in a divorce. They can hide. They don't need. There's no enabling. You can't say, well, I'm going to have your mother not pay your rent. Okay.
Because they already have the money. Okay, so. Well, the other thing is, with that percentage, so is there possibly the idea that in those situations, it's hard for people to say no, so it's kind of, it's not as easy for people to kind of escape or run away, so they kind of have to acquiesce. Do you find that, is there a percentage of how many people go through an intervention, how many of them are sober a year later? Do we have any data or anything about that? I know in the treatment industry, it's not very high, which is really unfortunate. And in AA, it's even less, where somebody who starts AA and makes it a year, Is there any data to tell you yes, 90% of the people that you're intervening on are going to treatment,
Right.
but how many of them are actually still sober, a year later?
Right. And that's that's why I say it's not as important to me getting someone to treatment. That
Right.
really is the easy part. I'm not saying I'm anything spectacular.
Right.
But that's why I say sustainable long-term recovery. There's too many variables because the longer you can keep someone in treatment and say in sober living after, the higher it's going to go. So some people that are stuck with, say, 28 days that their insurance company will pay, it's really not fair.
Right.
To compare those to someone who can spend 6 months at Ocean Drive and then do sober living. So it's a
Right.
tough thing to do.
And now they actually have people that will sit at your house with you, or
Oh.
people that you can pay. The wealthy have it good.
Yes, they do.
Whereas you're really, if you're homeless, you're looking for housing.
Right, exactly.
Or like, how can I afford to live here or
Right,
not live
or
here?
best
So,
intentions. I do want to be sober. I do want to stop stealing, but I have no home. Nobody
Yeah.
will speak to me. I have no transportation, and nobody will hire me.
Right, and so there's there's a dichotomy even in this field of the nonprofits and the people working from grants, and then the people who actually
Right.
have money.
Right.
And so
Give
there's
the
like,
grants.
Yeah,
give money for the grants.
there's like this kind of like incongruency, but it's all the same. Everybody. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how little money you have.
It's the great equalizer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it affects, and yeah, it affects that. You used to think the addict was some snaggletooth homeless guy that it annoyed you for money, but I mean, no.
So the idea, and that's another thing, that people who can actually work and keep a job and they haven't lost, don't have a hard time thinking of themselves as an addict.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they're functional.
Right.
And it's harder for them to see that. When you get into an intervention, usually it's because the person is dysfunctional, right? They're not
Usually,
really
yes.
able to kind
By
of
the time they call me, because everybody wants to think this will fix itself. So yeah, by the time they call me, it's pretty. The family's pretty exhausted. They're ravaged. The person's out of control. That's why alcoholics, it still will always be the biggest problem, but there can be functioning alcoholics until they're not.
Right.
And so that's a prime example.
Right, and I think people don't realize how dangerous alcohol is. There's so much press on the opioid, epidemic, but alcohol still is the number one killer.
And will be.
As
Right.
always, because it's normalized. People can actually access it, and it's
Socially
the one-
accepted.
Yeah, and it's one of the ones that people actually they can have a seizure and die
Right.
on. So
When you detox, right?
yeah,
Right.
without, if you don't detox medically, like
Right.
if you just decide to stop cold turkey, which a lot of people don't realize either.
That and Xanax.
Yeah.
Heroin, opiates, it's a hell of a detox. It is brutal and painful. It's not going to kill you, though,
Right.
to detox.
So, what is it that you love about being an interventionist? What is like your favorite thing about it?
That's changed. I used to love to travel and meet a lot of people, and I do love the recovery process. I like being somewhat a part of it. The families are so grateful.
Right.
I mean, it can be exhausting. It can be where you have to try and keep yourself separate from what's going on. But I love the recovery process. I like to see the finished product.
Okay.
And most of the time I do get to see it. It's great.
And so, do you stay in touch with families that long, like long after? I know that you coach them for, you said 6 months, about 3 to 6 months, but then do you get to see like stories like years later of people that you've helped?
I do, and that's when I used to work with adolescents. That was really nice, but I still do to a degree. But I do. I get a lot of grandparents, or I met someone on a plane that had fallen for an internet rehab down in Florida, and they were just so overwhelmed. And he was 72 and she was 68, and I
Right.
taught him into Cumberland Heights. He came back, went there, and he still calls me. I met him on a plane. So yeah.
Right. Well, we're actually out of time, like probably 20 seconds ago, but either way, I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, no, thank you.
Thank you for being here with us. And we have been with Phil Plant, who is an interventionist and a therapist. And of course, you've been here for Recovery Matters, where we talk about different aspects of recovery, from substance abuse, behavioral health disorders, and mental health disorders. And please join us again another time. And thank you for watching. We are currently undergoing a mental health crisis. Millions of people are struggling with depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicidal ideations, or a substance use disorder. If you or someone you know needs help with a behavioral health, mental health, or addiction issue, please reach out. There is support for what you're going through. Call 800-676-0929 to speak with a recovery navigator who will help you find support. Again, call 800-676-0929. Call now. Recovery is possible, and recovery matters.